Thanks, Alice. Lots of very interesting things to think about there. Rob Kerr has managed to join us from Guelph. Thank you very much, and we've adapted the agenda accordingly. He is corporate manager of community energy at the City of Guelph. Holds a degree in physics and the environmental studies, 25 years of experience working in the field of energy management. He has previously been responsible for delivery of energy services and energy programs at all levels of government, and his experience ranges from energy conservation activities to leading edge approaches to energy, climate change, and community sustainability. Are we, have you got a flash drive?
Is my presentation?
It should be preloaded. You know, the presentation is
I know it too.
Okay, it may be there.
Good morning. Just looking for, there we go. Just looking for my presentation. Thank you for reshuffling the schedule this morning. I guess I'm batting cleanup now instead of hitting off like I was this morning. It was a Monday morning, one of those Monday mornings where I woke up feeling on top of things, and it's going to be a great week. And here it's 4.5 hours later. I set a record coming to Toronto today. I know, it's astounding. And, you know, I got to listen to the radio a lot, so there's some things I did here this morning that were quite interesting. So forgive me for scrambling a little bit. Is there an advancer up here? Can you tell me that, Alex? Or you've got one in your bag.
I don't know if it's Mac compatible or if the Mac operator
Okay,
will
maybe
allow
I
us
can
to
just
use it.
do page down.
See this? Is there another?
Okay.
See if that works.
Okay.
Those standardizations, right? You don't have one?
No. Okay. There we go. No, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry for scrambling there, folks. Unfortunately, I didn't hear the previous presentation, so if I do any repetition, I apologize for that. What I'd like to do is sort of literally follow the title of the agenda as I read it, talk a little bit about where we are with our community energy plan. We just celebrated our 5th birthday on a 25-year plan, so we're 20% in. And as I don't need to tell most of you, the provincial policy context in which our plan was originated and where it stands today has been an evolution, a moving target. There's lots of ways to frame that. I'm not here to bash the province, but I would like to sort of tie, you know, where we are today to the provincial reality and our relationship with provincial policy. I think I'd start off by saying, you know, as a municipality, and my municipal colleagues know this well, we say it to ourselves all the time, we're creatures of the province constitutionally, and there's some realities to that. Coming down this morning, I was really pleased to hear Kathleen Wynne on the radio, our new premier, mention municipalities and the Green Energy Act in one sentence. That was great, and I was listening closely for that. And I'm quite excited by that and optimistic, as I think we should all be politically as much as we can. So this is the summary of our plan. Many of you in the room have heard this many, many times, and I'm glad to see familiar faces here today. It's a 25-year plan that has what I think is a pretty aggressive target of 50% energy use per capita or 60% GHG per capita, while we grow by a significant amount of people to 175,000 people. We're at 125 now. That is my first tie to the province. That number comes from the Places to Grow process and the legislation that dictated it. We are just outside the Greenbelt. We're a growth area. We're just on the other side of it. I used to tell people Guelph was 1 hour away from Toronto. I'm going to stop saying that. The plan is multifaceted. There's actually 11 high-level targets. I don't have time to go through them all, but they fall into the categories, all aspects of the energy space: generation, distribution, conservation, overlaid with what I heard coming in the room when Alex was talking, with the way we want to build our city. So it's our growth plan, which has some serious density targets in it. Again, time doesn't allow me to talk about it in detail, but urban form really addresses transportation and the kind of services we provide to that new urban form. So we're talking about intense areas of the city planned for, density nodes and transportation nodes, and I think that's been referred to a couple of times already. The fundamentals behind the plan are sort of pictorially shown here. And I often say this, and it's not to really be critical necessarily, but I do want to make the point that the conversation in the province of Ontario around energy has largely been driven by conservation. And I think the average citizen thinks of energy as a conservation issue, and it is, obviously, but only in part. And this picture here is to try and illustrate that. It's the inefficiencies of centralized systems and the transportation of that energy and distribution all has inefficiencies built into it, so that by the time you get to the end use, and there's an extreme example here, that we have large-scale energy plants making coffee for us, you really start thinking about right-sizing energy generation and distribution, and the great efficiencies that can be found there, and I show that here to demonstrate the fundamentals of what our plan is all about. So it's really greening up all those systems, and you recognize the same picture, but we've changed the pictures all the way up through local generation, district energy distribution, smart grid, efficient buildings, urban form, hopefully to make more efficient coffee, because we want to keep drinking it, obviously. We've done 2 years of reporting now on our community-wide targets. We followed the ICLEI protocol. Some of you might know that. It's an international protocol for communities, and it was very important we choose a protocol. We want to be able to measure repeatedly and have a credible reference for our measurement. So we're seeing trends downward over the 2 years. And that's good news, and it's certainly informed quite a community conversation about what's behind this graph. And the general reaction we get from a lot of folks as they engage with this is that the economy, or the lack of a robust economy, really helped us with our energy and greenhouse gas performance. And there's no doubt there's a link. In fact, we're about to embark on a study partnered with McMaster University to learn more about that link between energy and local economy. There's not a great deal of research on local economy. Obviously, economic analysis is pervasive, obviously. But at the local level and linked to what we're trying to do with local energy, there's less of it. You know, the major indicator that most folks know is unemployment rates. Guelph has enjoyed a very good unemployment rate historically, and we've beat the national and Ontario averages almost every month, except for a few exceptions, and in most recent months have had a really good performance. So that being a rather broad indicator, but a good one, is showing that the economy has not necessarily been the major driver of our energy and GHG performance. Our plan was about 2 years ahead of the Green Energy Act. You know, don't say that in a bragging way necessarily. I think it helped us get ready and be prepared for opportunity as it emerged coming out of the Green Energy Act. One of the fundamental things I'll point out here is the reality of the Green Energy Act sort of has a conundrum in it. One is it empowers communities, it empowers local governments to be more proactive in the generation and distribution side of the energy picture. But the same side, it actually removes municipal interaction with development, and this is playing out in rural areas around wind mainly, and it's become very much part of the public conversation. And Kathleen Wynne mentioned it this morning. Obviously, that's how high profile it is. And so there's that reality that we're trying to sort out as we think of what our role could be. I was really glad to hear Alex talk about collaboration in his final slide, or variations of that theme. I start out by saying, and I say to anybody who asks me, you know, what have you learned, what's taken you to where you are today, I would say it's collaboration. There's no policy framework, there's no institutions, or very few, behind what we're trying to achieve. So collaboration is how you do it. Right from the beginning of our plan, we had hundreds of people involved in community workshops, charrettes, et cetera, trips to council with regular reports, widely reported. And that's something, obviously, we're proud of and is an indication of good community engagement. But as a guy who's in charge of implementing mainly, I see this as the place where my networks and stakeholders and collaborations are found. So a lot of the folks around the table, quite literally in these pictures, are part of working groups, are developing projects now, have actually become quite engaged. So the continuity of our collaborations is sort of a secondary aspect of that, and here's just the logos we have with the local partners, which every time I speak, somebody points out that their logo is not on there, and they're a little upset. Well, so that's kind of cool, and and it's quite pervasive. Everybody here represented by these logos are part of our governance structure through the Mayor's Task Force, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. Networks outside of the city are very, very important, and bravo to both York and Ryerson for embracing the community energy challenge and the great deal of knowledge that needs to be acquired and aligned. I'm very pleased to see this and very happy to be invited here. It's our networks that really where my greatest learning takes place. Quest may have been mentioned already today, I don't know. It's a national network, Quality Urban Energy Systems of Tomorrow. Richard Laszlo's here from there. This is probably my premier, most important network in terms of all stakeholders and those focused in on community energy and the opportunity afforded by it. And a great deal of learning takes place. The Transatlantic Urban Climate Dialogue, I always point out it's a rather tortured title, but it's a collaboration that I was fortunate to, some serendipity, I kind of stumbled in through my previous work with ICLEI, which is a international association of municipalities. And what it is 2 regions in Germany and 2 regions in North America, of which we're happy to be one, have been interacting for 2 years now by visiting each of the 4 regions. The last workshop's taking place in Guelph in May. And the basic premise that most of us have said in one form or another, that Germany is very much like Ontario policy and is 5-7 years ahead of us. There's a great deal to learn. That's proven to be true. I'm learning what I didn't expect I'd learn, which is it's not all beautiful in Germany, and we often sometimes say they're doing it in Germany, why aren't we doing it here? That's very simplistic. The implementation challenges, the interaction between their legislation and the marketplace has been tricky and rough and has had some hard times. However, the bigger goal of a lower carbon national energy grid is being achieved and has really driven a great deal of public support for the legislation that's taken them to recent times where they're aiming to remove nuclear completely by 2020, something that I think many people in Ontario would like to see discussed. Our friends at AMO and FCM, our provincial and national municipal associations, have embraced this file and continue to do it as well, and we're very pleased to see that. FCM's Sustainable Communities Conference is coming up next month in Windsor, and we expect to be there and actively interacting. So when we look at our plan, one of the things that we learned from the very beginning was the conversation was imagined to be a technical one. What technologies could we implement in the city? And obviously technology is important here. I don't want to diminish it. But there's a marketplace that's kind of prepared to push into the opportunities that we can provide. So I tend to sort of rephrase what we're trying to do, which is to really create an environment that will attract innovation and existing technologies, and not to be too distracted by the latest technology, imagining it's going to take us to where we want to go. So the governance and oversight and keeping it all stitched together is the important thing. So you saw the pictures and logos of all the folks. They're all kind of stitched together at the Mayor's Task Force on Community Energy that has subcommittees. This is our first step towards governance. The long-term goal is to have a community energy utility in some form or another. We haven't painted it completely. We want to consider it an evolution. But that community utility could be delivering all aspects of energy, not just a commodity: electricity, thermal energy, other forms of energy, conservation services, educational services. So we have this sort of high-level vision to do that, and the mandate of this task force has just been completed, and we're now doing an analysis and making recommendations for the next phase. I say we're ready. That's probably a little arrogant. We try and be ready. We're almost ready. Some days you feel more ready than others, so there's lots of qualifications to this. But inside City Hall, again, I've only heard Alex's presentation, so I've got to keep sort of pulling comments from it. Aligning City Hall and our internal structure as a local government, always asking the question in a multifaceted community based effort and the many stakeholders, what's the best role we can play as a local government? It's not all roles. It's about what's the best role. And we can wear many hats. We have great opportunity to affect change in our community. So one of the things we've done, and I'll come back to this, is I came to the city, I'm talking about me personally, when I joined the city 3 years ago, I started in the environment department, and this effort was considered or perceived by many observers, or most I would say, as an environmental effort. And of course we had GHG targets, which would make sense that it would be. I now work in the economic development department after a stop with the CAO's office. And I reflect upon that in terms of how my role is seen within City Hall, within our local government. And it's become quite clear that in majority what the CEI is, the Community Energy Initiative, is an economic development effort. And it's increasingly being seen that way and structured that way. And I'm quite pleased to see that, because the opportunities are being revealed to me every day. One of the first things we did with this new structure and thinking was take advantage of the Municipal Act, which is the thing that really defines how we operate and how we relate to the province. But it does allow us to create holding companies which operate under the Business Corporation Act. So cities can create companies for specific purposes. And we know this, Brian talked about it, I'm assuming. I think you've maybe referenced it, I'm not sure. And we know they've done that in Markham with their district energy system. And we know there's other places that are doing land-based development with their holding companies. We want to use our holding company to be ready to go to the next stage of governance. So this long-term goal of a community energy utility would very likely be found in this. Cities can't go into any kind of business. The business must be for community benefit, and the Municipal Affairs and Housing has to approve it and so forth. So there's a great deal of oversight to that. But the opportunities that can be found here are huge. This slide I could spend all day on, but it really talks to the interface between planning and the Community Energy Initiative. So it's been great for me personally, because the energy guy hasn't worked with planners traditionally. And I'm becoming a fast-track student of planning. And I'll just go through some of these very quickly. With the Canadian Urban Institute, we really got our first step into this world by looking at energy density mapping. So quite simply asking the question, we have absolute targets, but where is our performance going to take place? So we got into spatial thinking, and that was our first foray. We learned a ton. I think the Urban Institute did as well, and a number of other cities after us engaged in this as well. And we're about to loop back on that, and there's been a great foundation, and I want to check in with you, Jeff, today with an update on that. We've filed our official plan amendment, OPA 48. It's now with the ministry looking approval, and we've integrated a great deal of the aspects of our Community Energy Initiative into that, official plan. And are expecting, well, there's no sign it's not going to be approved by Municipal Affairs and Housing, and we're watching that closely. 2 secondary plans in city, downtown, and a growth area at the edge of the city also have all aspects of our plan in it. We recently, and this is where collaboration plays out very well, we recently did an intervention with Municipal Affairs and Housing around the provincial policy statement. It was a cooperation of a number of stakeholders. Some are in the room here. Toronto Region Conservation Authority took the lead on that. And we basically provided recommendations and advocacy to the provincial policy statement. And for those of you who don't know, the PPS is sort of the governing high-level document and legislation that guides planning in the province, to acknowledge a fundamental thing, which is that we often talk about energy policy in Ontario when in majority it's electricity policy. And we have to remember that. This comes around, and I can't ignore it anymore. This has become such a hard reality in Guelph that it's going to inform a great deal of our work moving forward after our 5th anniversary, and a great deal of our advocacy work when we interact with the province. We were invited to the FIT 2.0 Land Use Working Group, and that was an honor to be invited. It was a rather quick collaboration that the ministry did with stakeholders around large-scale FIT applications that would be in and around urban centers. Now, obviously, by definition, that's what our plan is about. And the way the FIT rules read were that any project that is on or abuts, and that's a planning term, abuts residential, it would not be allowed. And almost every project, land-based project, imagined within the city of Guelph, whether it was a corporation, the city, or private sector, was going to lose because of those rules. So we successfully intervened to that, or we certainly know what our input to that working group was, and We haven't seen it yet, but we expect those rules to be amended to allow for consideration of projects inside urban boundaries that have an impact on residential. And we have a very large solar project on our closed landfill that looks like it's going to go, and we're very excited about that. I know my time is probably going to get pushed here. The 2012 building code is very exciting. It's moved from a safety-based code to an energy-based code, and we're excited about that. We do know that it's not as aggressive as we want to be, and so there's still a big gap to fill there, but we just want to acknowledge that. We had our council provide a blanket approval for FIT applications, and we're quite proud of that. Most municipalities got really stuck on that. And our council, and this is where collaboration pays off. I mean, council had seen this plan in effect for 5 years and felt quite confident that there'd be no abuses by giving a blanket approval. Local improvement charge legislation, I don't know if it's been mentioned today, but this is really another pretty profound result of collaboration and the growing movement around community energy, where, again, a number of folks around the community energy file nationally had focused in Ontario to change legislation. And changing legislation is a very ambitious thing to do. I would have never imagined setting out to do it, actually. But enough people came around, and there's enough logic behind it, that said, local improvement charges, which is another tool municipalities have to make change in their community. And it really allows them to make specific investments in specific parts of the city or for specific purposes, and can collect that extra charge over a very long period of time through the tax base. It's a very powerful tool. It's how hospitals get special service. It's where areas of the city that require sidewalk upgrades, and there's no other way to do it. It's been used for many years, and it's well known. Why I'm excited about it is that my city knows how it works, so we're all set up to do local improvement charges. All we have to do is expand its application to energy. So in the big scheme of things, in terms of shifting bureaucracies, no matter how big they are, this is one that's got a lot of potential. Building energy labels is another thing that's in our plan. It's actually one of our 11 targets, on the basis that labels are a very powerful tool for affecting the marketplace for energy efficiency. So we don't have legislative authority to drive efficiency in our buildings. We really have to think about market tools that are going to do it. And we think building energy labels are a very powerful thing to do. We're very pleased that Natural Resources Canada, now that the EcoFit program has been canceled, and there's a lot of gnashing of teeth over that, but NRCan is not off the energy file completely, and they're focusing on energy labeling as far as we know. And so a national standard for building codes that are very similar to the ones we see on appliances, for example, could be a very powerful tool, and we're at the door to try and be as involved in that as soon as possible. And lastly, and this is probably the most exciting thing, and it'll take up most of my time this year, is we are developing, starting tomorrow, a thermal master plan for the city of Guelph. And this has taken 5 years, really, to get to this level of developing a plan that addresses the thermal needs of the city as opposed to the electricity needs, which are being served by the grid anyway. I mean, this is what you realize, is that focusing on electricity is great. It attracts investment. It has lots of local benefits, don't get me wrong, but you're really making electricity to serve the grid. And hopefully you get a contract to do so. Thermal is really where you build cities. And we learned this in Germany. This is one takeaway from working in Germany so far. Every city in Germany has two plans, electricity plan and a thermal plan. They're separate and very integrated. Density is supported by thermal energy and its efficiency. Waste energy from industry suddenly has a value in a market through district energy systems, through a thermal policy. And lastly, the percentage of bioenergy inputs to urban district energy systems in Europe is astounding. It's probably the biggest study that I have, or the biggest impact on me personally as the overseer of our plan locally, that I learned in Germany. In Stuttgart, where I was recently in November, depending on conditions, as much as 40% of the thermal needs of the city of Stuttgart, almost 1 million people, comes from bioenergy inputs from the region, which are agricultural and or industrial biowastes. So building infrastructure that allows for those inputs is really what the thermal master plan is all about. I've talked a little bit about the community. I won't go on again. It's a frustration, and I don't know how my time is, Mark. Please come on.
I'm going to have to leave.
Okay.
It's a little family emergency, I'm afraid.
Oh.
Jose Echeverry is going to take over chairing.
There's Jose there. Okay. Building from the community up, community-based support for these community-level plans is, again, it's not something that I've made up here. It's what we learn in other cities where there's been successful performance around energy or GHG targets per capita, or however they might mention it. So I'm very focused on this, and it's been a real challenge to try and align community interests, the many NGOs, nonprofits, and other interest groups towards this common goal. And I think one of the things that is, I'll call it a challenge as opposed to a barrier, conservation demand management and demand management funding from our utilities is very important for these groups. In fact, many of them just survive on it. And it happens at a level that, as I've said earlier, is significant. These people are visible, but it's not significant in the sense of the scale of our targets of a community energy initiative. And the support for these groups needs to be higher, and I think the province can play a role. I think there's increasing evidence that the social movement in support of these sometimes perceived technical targets is really important to get there, and we hear this all the time. And so we're constantly advocating to the province for support in this area. All right. We're doing a lot. Here's a map of the city of Guelph. I don't have time to go through all these projects. We're focusing on large-scale solar, ground-based, rooftop, microfit to commercial-sized projects on rooftops. Combined heat and power is also a very significant part of applications currently before the OPA. Combined heat and power being the cornerstone, imagined cornerstones of our district energy system. And this is sort of a written summary. The point I want to make here is that, and this is to my "we're ready" slide, 60 megawatts of applications, and the OPA has confirmed this with me, the Power Authority has confirmed it, is before them for applications. So projects that have been developed to the point of robust applications, the OPA is pretty demanding in terms of the completeness of their applications. And it's about 25% of our average demand in our community. So we're quite proud of this statistic where we are today. The unfortunate part is, I think one project has been approved, and it's a small one. They're all stuck at the Power Authority. And the reasons why they're stuck at the Power Authority, I can't stand here and tell you. That's the problem. They haven't been rejected either. So, you know, it's a kind of a limbo, and I'm hoping with some of the politics that are swirling around energy and some of the alignments that are taking place, hopefully will move us through to understanding our status with these applications. However, you know, as I said earlier, we're no longer obsessed with this, so I'm not going to stand here and complain about it. We're done. I mean, we've put them in, and there's others going in, but essentially the majority have gone in, and now we're focusing in on thermal. Heaven help us all if these got all approved and we're fully embraced in our thermal strategies. We're going to really have to scale up. I've said this already. I'll repeat it again. This is a bit of a mantra for us. We see our energy plan as an economic development plan. Economic development in a sustainable way, I need to say. You know, we're not talking about doing things the old way. But the point is, I want to make is we're mainstreaming. We're working to mainstream our plan as a fundamental aspect of an emerging new economy. That's how we're framing it in Guelph. And I can say my experience after, you know, many attempts to try and focus in the mission statement and really get our elevator pitch down, this is the one that resonates with the community. There's no question about it. There's a small voice in Guelph who doesn't want to see any growth, but generally folks know that we're going to grow. The province has dictated 50,000 people to us through Places to Grow legislation. It's a reality. So this is fundamental to our advocacy work. It's a long list here. I don't think time allows me to really dive into it. Yeah, I'm getting the roll-up sign. But when we speak to the province, and there's lots of opportunities to do it. I mean, bravo to the province in terms of they're kind of open to talk. We have lots of lines of communication up through various ministries. But one of the things that we learned, and maybe I'll finish with this, is through our work with the provincial policy statement and other interactions with the Ministry of Energy and Municipal Affairs and Housing. Those seems to be the two ministries we're working with. You start to realize there's a disconnect there that's just not allowing us to resonate with our messages, which we're so righteous about. I mean, we're feeling we're building a sustainable community, we're creating jobs, we're cleaning up the environment, all the things that we believe the province wants to see in terms of the future of sustainable communities. But why isn't it resonating? It's because I believe the Ministry of Energy is interested in generating electrons. I'm sure, you know, they want to see us be a successful city, but it's not really their policy. That's policies held over at municipal affairs and housing. And it's an anecdote I share often, and I'll finish with it. We did have an audience with Kathleen Wynn's staff and even her herself when she was a minister in that department, advocating for thermal energy, district energy, the technology that supports it, the planning framework that supports it, was fundamentally part of the growth of the city of Guelph. We've already seen it attracting investment and driving efficiencies, and we're very confident. In other words, no thermal policy. And Kathleen Wynne famously said, my God, how did we miss this? And I think she meant we, the province. And I may be paraphrasing, I heard this secondhand. But I really was pleased to hear that, because at least it was an acknowledgement. And now that she's Premier, I'm hoping that it'll be pursued a little bit further. So with that, thank you for waiting for me and your attention. Thank you.